Hey, Village Church, Pastor Mark here. Good to have you all across the internet, online Village Church. Man, we are so excited. Psalm 23 is where we are. So if you got a Bible, have one, open it, Psalm 23. This might be the most beloved of all the Psalms. This might be one of the most beloved, if not the most beloved passage in the entire Bible. It's crazy. We're going to do it in two parts. We're going to hit verse 1, a little bit of verse 2 today, and then do the rest next week because it's that rich, it's that important, it's that meaningful. This is a psalm that even if you're not a Christian, and hopefully there's a bunch of you who don't even know Jesus who are watching this, we are so glad you're part of this church. We exist for you, that you would meet the Jesus behind this text. This is something you might have heard though, at funerals, weddings. This is like a pretty famous psalm. This is the pop. This is the Justin Bieber of Psalms, all right? This is the pop song of Psalms, all right? And so it's amazing. It's layers. We learn about God. We learn about life. We learn about us. We learn about going through difficulty. We learn about going through highs, awesome stuff, family, all of it. And so it's about God as a shepherd. And we're going to learn about him, but then how do we actually find satisfaction, meaning, purpose in life? That's what it's all about. One writer said this sunny little psalm has dried many tears and supplied the mold into which many hearts have poured their peaceful faith. That's the reality. Now, here's what I love about it. It's real world stuff, all right? So it starts like this. It goes, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. So I love how tangible the Bible, that Christianity is. I remember, it's not always like that, but if we're true to the Bible, we're real world people. Like we're not living in some esoteric, unrelatable, unrelevant world. The Bible's like in your life. I remember when I started coming to church and I was 19, and as a kid in high school, you have all these tensions and pressures. It's girls, it's parties, it's drugs, it's who am I? It's what am I going to do with my life? If I don't ace this test, I'm going to be a nobody. All these pressures and tensions, which some of you are in high school or early 20s feel that. And I remember going into church and I sat there and these guys were preaching and teaching and people were talking around me. I was like, I don't even know what, they seem to be living on a different planet than everything I was going through in my life, like the real world stuff. And they were talking about ideas and it was just wacky. It was like part of a whole other world. And I was like, are you guys even like in my life at all? This guy was up there preaching, he preached this passage one day was where Jesus comes in and he says, go ahead and get my donkey and untie the donkey, and then I'm going to ride the donkey into Jerusalem. And so he gets up, he's preaching this sermon. He's like, so we're all donkeys and it's time for God to untie you. And I'm like, what is happening right now? And then everything going through my life, this is what we're talking about, donkey time? So listen, the Bible's actually about real life, your soul, your heart, your mind, the temptations, the pressures, the things you're actually going through. And he calls him a shepherd. And he says, it's got this idea. Now, one writer's put it this way. This psalm is about protection during dangerous travel. Now think about life, right? As a metaphor. A dangerous traveler is a flock of sheep facing risk in narrow ravines and dangerous pathways. All of it shows a trustworthiness in God in the face of every circumstance, so that the speaker is confident and serene in the face of every threat. Does that sound relevant to our life right now? We have threats, we have adventure, we have ravines, we got valleys, we got mountains, we got figure life out, we got death, we got greatness. And in the midst of it, who are we going to trust? How are we going to trust? How are we going to actually have joy in the midst of it? He's going, it's this paradigm. You get a shepherd. Now, here's the thing. There's a guy named Jan David Hedding. I wrote a book years ago called Following Jesus. He says this, and this is this quote always stuck with me because something we don't talk about. He says, the number one issue in the universe is leadership. Now, check that for a second. He says, the thing that's going to define your life more than anything else is leadership. Who is your leader? And ultimately, all kinds of different worldviews try to get you to believe different teachers and leaders and religious. And what we have here is saying, I know who my leader is. It's the Lord. He's my shepherd. He's the one who's actually going to guide me. And that's going to define everything about my life in regard to sexuality and money and family and work. Everything gets defined by what pathway are we actually following, God's pathway or the world's. Those are the only two options. And yesterday, my middle daughter wanted to go to Starbucks. So we got on our bikes and we rode to Starbucks. what I realized on our way back was the path you take defines everything about your life, because we took one path there and I was like, this is legit. I get all these coffees and I've got them in like one of the trays, and now I have to cycle home. So I'm like one-handing it like this and I'm like, yee, all over the place. And she's like, Daddy, let's take this way instead. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And it's like all uphill and sideways and backwards. I'm like spilling stuff all over to the point I get the thing home and my youngest like, where's my hot chocolate? I'm like, it's like half gone. She's like, chugs it right in front of me, throws the thing out like a guy at a bar. It's like, bam, throws the mug down and walks. Half it was gone. Why? Because my daughter took me on the trail you take in life is going to be the thing that defines everything about your life. And so here's the thing. He's going, the Lord's my shepherd. I got pathways to choose. I got places to go. I got things to do. I got views to get about everything in life. And the Lord is the one who's going to define that. Now, here's the beautiful thing about this that we miss as modern Canadians is we miss the contrast, the juxtaposition here. The Lord, so the Lord, so underline that, the Lord, that's the highest being, highest person, most glory, most beautiful, most perfect, most awesome thing in the world. And then, this is what we miss, is my shepherd. That's an oxymoron almost. That is like saying two opposite things, because a shepherd in that culture wasn't some glorified, like, what's up, I'm a shepherd, and glossy, whatever. The shepherd was the most lowly, humble job of all the jobs. You're hanging out with animals sometimes 2 months at a time. You have no people around. You're lonely. You're dirty. You're cleaning up poo all the time. You smell. You were seen as a thief. This is God identifying himself as the most humble, lowly thing that we know of. It's beautiful because God enters in. He's real. He's not removed and like, I'm better than everybody else. He comes down, and it's got this beautiful implication for us because, of course, even in the birth narratives of Jesus, the angels show up to who? Shepherds, right? They were guiding their flocks by night, and the angel of the Lord shineth upon them. All of that, right, Charlie Brown? All of that happened. He uses shepherds. He uses the lowest, dirtiest, most conniving, and he uses them to draw them to the personal work of Jesus. Crazy. Now listen, God will use anyone. You sitting there, you think my past is a mess, I'm a disaster. God will use any person on the planet to do his work. See, here's the thing. We live in cancel culture, all right? And cancel culture will cancel you for any mistake you made 15 years ago. Doesn't matter what it was. We cancel you. We no longer listen to you. If cancel culture existed in the Bible, we would have no one. There'd be no Moses, all right? I was on a text group call with a bunch of pastors, and they're like, well, we can't use that guy anymore because he did this. You don't have David, right? David was an adulterer. He threw a guy out to be murdered. You can't have Moses. Moses killed a guy, but he didn't just kill him. It was first-degree murder. He walked up to him, and the text in Exodus says he looked left and right, killed an Egyptian, and buried him. It was like, I looked around, made sure no one was going to get me, and buried a guy, dead. That's Moses, the great Moses. David's out. Moses is out. The Apostle Paul, by the way, murderer. All three of those guys, murderers. And we're not even getting started in whatever else is going on. Skeletons in the closet. Cancel culture. God will go, I will take people who've done it. Listen, one thing I've known, there's a guy named Gordon MacDonald, and he wrote a book, Rebuilding Your Broken World. And he is a pastor. He was actually a presidential advisor during the Monica Lewinsky trial. He shepherded the president through that, and actually was a very public figure at the time, has served in churches. He's like 86, 87 years old, admits in this book that he cheated on his wife one time. He cheated on her, a weak moment, pastoral stress and pressure and all the stuff he was doing, did this thing. He writes and speaks to now pastors and leaders about rebuilding your life from a broken world. And the fact that you've let people down, you've done something that has destroyed people, and you think you're not worthy anymore. And he says this in that book. He says there are broken world people. And then he says this, will you, and I'm speaking to those of you who don't think you're worthwhile, you don't think God will use you anymore. You are the shepherds of our culture. He says, will you, talking directly to you, concentrate on the pain of this broken world experience that you did and resist it? Or will you permit the pain to become an environment in which God can clearly speak to you about matters of ultimate importance? Are you going to let it destroy you? Are you going to let it be used by God to actually recognize that he can use anybody? And it's the environment that God is now going to talk to you about ultimate importance. Remember how you made that mistake? It's because you weren't prioritizing me in your life. So now you're ready to talk? I'm not done with you yet. I'm not ready to pass you off yet. I'm ready to use you in this moment tomorrow. All right? So all of us, point being, all of us, even those who aren't broken world people, we all need guidance and leadership in our lives. We are a mess. We are sheep. Now, here's what you got to understand. Saying the Lord is my shepherd is like, it's offensive to humankind because he's saying you're a sheep, right? And sheep are the dumbest creatures on the planet. They bump into each other. They get all these parasites in them. They're constantly fighting each other, and they'll just shuck right off the end of a cliff and follow the other ones. You can go on and watch this stuff, all right? I know the images. It's like, boom, boom. They're going into the rocks on the beach. They're all dead. They're following each other off the end, and he's going, we all need this guidance because wolves are going to eat me. Friends are going to destroy me. Sin and habits are going to take over my life that are going to kill me. I'm going to go off the edge with everybody else. And listen, at all ages and stages, your friends, your family, your coworkers are going down this route. And he's saying, don't go down that route. That is only death. There is a truly human life, a truly human way. And it needs to oftentimes be the opposite way that the world is going. And so we say, we value this way of doing money and family and sexuality. All of these things in their life, the world is going one way. And Jesus is saying, I actually need to direct you this way. This is what it means to follow Jesus as shepherd. And what starts to happen is we start to go, but I just want to do what everyone else is doing because that's what's normal. And what you got to understand is the New Testament comes along and goes, no, you've got what is normal wrong, right? Destroying the world ain't normal. Living for the weekend isn't normal. Medicating yourself so that you can get up and just to function in the world in regard to happiness. I'm not talking about mental health. I'm talking about I just can't deal with life. I just want to, stay in a fog half my day. These things aren't the way to be truly human. And the Bible calls us and goes, but there's a way through the person and work of Jesus and the power of the Spirit in which you can have truly human life, but it means not going off the edge with the other sheep. Can we wake up? Church, can we be the opposite to so much of what the culture actually believes? Go read the Sermon on the Mount. It's a woke sermon, all right? It's Jesus going, hey, the world says do it this way. I say do it this way. The easiest thing is to get back at someone who hates you. My call, turn the other cheek. Don't worship money. Over and over and over again, Jesus is saying, I'm calling you to be separate. I'm calling you to be opposite. I'm calling you to be different. And so here's the thing. God is seen as shepherd. 24 hours a day, here's what shepherds would do, hang out with sheep. Do you want that job? It's a garbage job. It smells, you don't get much money, there's nothing in it for you in one sense. I mean, of course you get to keep sheep and sell the stuff back in the day, but it's not like, oh my goodness, I'm so excited to wake up and go off into the mountains and chill out with these things for a month while they herd around and graze in the pastures. This is great, this is fun. And yet, here's what we see. God is the good shepherd. Think of all the different little stories in the Bible. Luke chapter 15, Jesus tells this great story about the lost sheep. And he says that the owner, God himself, will leave the 99 sheep and go off and search out the one lost sheep and take it and bring it back and celebrate and have a party with it. He'll put it over his shoulders, he says. It's this beautiful image. So what we're gonna learn all through this thing is we pivot. We learn stuff about us and we learn stuff about God. What we learn about God is he's the good shepherd who leaves the 99 and hunts you down. That's how good he is, not how good you are. Remember, you're the one you are lost sheep. You were part of a herd. You were walking around and then you just gonzo. You just disappeared. And God went, gosh, where did Mark go? I will leave the 99 and hunt him down. That's how good I am. That's how loved you are. The shepherd will leave to come find you. This is what salvation is. It's God hunting you down. It's not about you doing great things for him. He comes after you. You are lost. That's your state, lost. And I want to draw that out for a sec because here's what I think. I think so often we pitch the gospel as a way for you, if you don't know Jesus, to come to know a God that you didn't know. And so you're meeting a stranger, so just meet God. But actually the Bible constantly posits it different. It says somewhere in kind of the echo of your soul, almost like nostalgia, you actually knew God. You were already part of a flock, and now that's been lost. And what needs to happen is a reconciliation, a reconnection, a reorientation. So think about that in your own brain, your own soul, your own life. You know what's right. And the call of the gospel is to reconnect you back into who you originally were, who you originally meant to be, who we were in Adam, in the garden, walking with God in the cool of the day, and the shepherd comes and hunts us down, not because we've never known him, but because we were, and so that when we come to know him, it's like boom, it's like that Lewis image of all of a sudden you hear an echo from a song you didn't know, you think you've never heard the song, but all of a sudden it's memorable, you know it, and you can sing it. A country you arrive, you're like, I feel like I've been here. This is the call of the gospel for you who think you don't know God. You're made in his image. And you have this echo in your soul to reorient your life. And so there's this guy named Philip Keller. He wrote a book on the 23rd Psalm. And he was a shepherd for like 10 years of his life in the Middle East and Africa. And he writes a book called The Shepherd's Psalm from a Shepherd's Perspective. And so today and next week, I'm gonna quote from him a little bit so we can kind of get an idea, because you and I are kind of removed from shepherd culture and we don't understand the nuances of what's going on here. The Lord is my shepherd. So here's what Keller says. The sheep's well-being depends on what type of shepherd he has. So think about the God that you've chosen in your life. It could be the God of the universe in Jesus. It could be other religions. Maybe you're watching this and you're of another religion. Maybe you've just chosen the different gods of power and money and fame and reputation and materialism and family, whatever you're defining your happiness by. He says that your well-being depends on what type of shepherd you have. The good shepherd spares no pains for the welfare of his sheep. In memory, I still see one of the sheep ranches in our district, which was operated by a tenant sheepman. He ought never to have been allowed to keep sheep. His stock were always thin, weak, riddled with disease or parasites. Again and again, they would come and stand at the fence, staring blankly through the woven wire at the green, lush pastures which my flock enjoyed. Had they been able to speak, I am sure they would have said, "Oh, to be free from this awful owner." Each shepherd has his own distinctive earmark, which he cuts into one of the ears of his sheep. In this way, even at a distance, it's easy to determine to whom the sheep belongs. How good is the God who leaves the 99 and comes find you? How good is he as a sheep keeper, to the point where our souls are pining and yearning and looking over the fence of all of our money and all of our great things, and they're looking over the fence and we feel it. There can be more. I know it. There's an end to this. And I'm looking over the fence thinking there's got to be more than this. And God's going, yeah, that's because I'm in the place where if you come and become one of my sheep, that's the whole point. Now, so who's a sheep? So there's constant images throughout the Bible on this. One of the most famous is John chapter 10. Jesus talks about he says, I say to you, John 10 verse 1, he who does not enter by the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, what man is a thief and a robber? But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him, the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he's brought out all of his own, he goes before them. The sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers. You know what Jesus is talking about? I was in India years ago, and I was walking up all these villages, and I would see like these herds of sheep and these shepherds, and they'd go along and they kind of smack the sheep and stuff. We'll talk about that a little next week. But that their voice, I would watch a bit, and the sheep would start to go off this way, and all of a sudden the guy would go, and they go, and they turn back, because you hear. So you're asked the question, am I a sheep? Am I Jesus? Am I part of Jesus' flock? And what he just said is, here's how you know. First of all, you can't get into the sheep gate through another way. You can't go to heaven outside of me. You have to go through me, the good shepherd. That's what he says. But then he says, here's how you know if you're one of my sheep. Can you hear my voice? Or do you follow the voice of a stranger? Do you follow the voice of the world when it says do sexuality like this? Do popularity like this? Do business like this. Be a student like this. Be a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a grandmother or a husband like this. Or can you hear me when I talk? Jesus himself. Now, I got to tell you, there's been a few times in my life when I've actually heard the voice. Now, I think Jesus talked about like day to day. Can you hear my voice? How do you hear the voice of Jesus? Through the word, through prayer, through people around you, through leaders, through friends affirming things in your life. There's a few times in my life when I've heard like the distinct voice. I wouldn't say audible, but close to it. It was my call into ministry. It was my call to plant a church. It was a few things in my life. A few months ago when I flew into Toronto to do a conference, I walked into the conference and the guy who was leading the conference, who was greeting me, I went to the conference, we chatted for a bit. And just before I went up and spoke, I watched him talking in a room. And we as a church, we've been looking because we have a deep church planting vision. We want to plant churches all across Canada. And of course, Ontario is a massive percentage of Canada. 60-70% of the population lives in Ontario. So we want to have an outpost of church planting for village churches in Toronto. And so we've always been thinking about that. And I went out and just met this guy speaking at this thing. And all of a sudden, I'm watching him talk to this lady in a room. And the Holy Spirit goes, he's your Toronto guy. He's your Ontario regional director for Village Church to plant churches. And I'm like, what? I'm about to speak at a conference. Leave me alone. All right, I got things to do here. All right. And literally the voice of Jesus spoke out of the blue. I met this guy. I'm like, what's up, player? Moving on with my life. Like, I'm focused. I'm trying to do my thing. I'm like Tiger Woods going into a golf tournament. I'm like, what? Yeah, this is all fuzz to me. I'm not paying attention. I'm not asking those questions. I'm trying to hit a ball right now. I'm trying to preach to people. And all of a sudden, the voice of Jesus spoke. And now this is what's going on. The voice of Jesus had spoken to him, I come to find out. 6 months earlier, a woman in a meeting gave him a word and said, somebody from and he has it on his phone. He sent it to me. Somebody from British Columbia will come out and change the direction of your life. And he's like, I don't know what that is. I was booked a year ago to come speak at this thing. I take him out for lunch. I'm like, how are things going? I'm like, I got to catch a plane, but I think Jesus told me that you're supposed to go. He's like, what? No, come on. And he's like, wait a minute. This lady, crazy. The voice of Jesus speaks in the everyday. I remember when Aaron and I were going through our church planting assessment. This is a group, 15 people, scholars, pastors, church planters in a room, and they're evaluating whether you could ever plant a church. So I was terrified because I knew I was not qualified to plant a church. Speaking of cancel culture. And so I'm like, okay, I am not ready to do this. And this group of people said, yeah, you can do it. And then we went out and they brought in this other church planter and he spoke to us. And his church had gone through some problems over the last 4 or 5 years and they were shutting it down. He looked at us and he said, listen, when in the first 2 or 3 years, there's nobody at your church, you have no money, everybody's leaving you, here's all that you're gonna have in the end is the call. You're going to remember when you are tempted to walk away from this job, you're gonna remember only the voice of Jesus that he called you to do it. If he didn't call you to do it, just leave. Because you won't have enough motivation to actually do it in the end. See, this is now that's my context. Think of your context, man. Like, what is the thing in your life right now that you're like, I don't know if I can handle this? The voice of Jesus called you to it. He called you to a marriage. And I know in this moment, marriage is tough. It's difficult. You're all in each other's spaces. And some of you are starting to drift and wonder if it's over. But you stood in front of God and friends and family and say, for better, for worse, for richer, for poor, fight for it, friend. The voice of Jesus calls us to some things in life. Doesn't just direct us. There's a calling that happens and the shepherd does something at a deep level and he says, hey, listen, what are you actually called to do in your life? Some of you need to fight harder for a thing. Some of you need to go after a person and actually say, look, God called me to do, God is calling you to do this, whatever it is. And then we got to be open to those things in our life because when we start to doubt them, God will show up and speak if we ask him. Listen, a guy texted me this week, very sad. His father-in-law passed away suddenly. And he said, you know, Mark, he never believed in God, but I remember we would bring him to church and he wouldn't listen. And we brought him to Village one day. And I remember it. It was 10 years ago. And it was 3 or 4 weeks in the village. We probably had 100 people in the room, 90 people in the room in the gym. And I remember looking out and seeing this man. And he told me after that service, he said that was the first time he'd ever opened himself to God. And he said he gave his life to Jesus weeks after that and actually was part of our church. He just passed away. And he said, God used you to get his attention in a way that nobody else could get his attention. And it was the voice of Jesus in discouraging times at time. Because like I said last week, guys, it's like, I'm in here, there's no one here. I don't even know if you're listening. You could be on your phone, twiddling your thumbs right now, half on Twitter, half listening. There's no one in front of me. It's just poor Greg's face. It's getting sadder by the week. But what am I doing? And then I get a text like that. He died this week. But Jesus used you to speak to him. Okay, so you keep going. This is the voice of the shepherd speaks, and the question is, can you hear it? That's the definition of a sheep. Can I hear the voice of Jesus? How do I hear the voice of Jesus? And then he says this. Okay, so that's the Lord is my shepherd. Do you have Jesus as shepherd? That's one of the controlling questions of the whole thing. And then the second half of verse 1. And this is why we're only going to get to a couple verses today. I shall not want. I love this. I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd. I have absolute satisfaction. Boom. That's the thing listen, a sheep, you know what a sheep needs? Here's what a sheep needs. Everything. There's nothing a sheep doesn't need. They lack everything. All food, all warmth, all health. They literally are useless. They can do nothing themselves. They are dead without the shepherd. Without God, you and I got to understand we lack everything. Now, we're going to get common grace. Even if you don't believe in Jesus, even if you don't believe in God, you're going to get common grace. Jesus talks about this constantly. He says, it rains on the righteous and the unrighteous. Crops come up, food, you get art, you get music, you get beauty, there's certain graces that we all get in life, whether we believe in Jesus or not. That's not the definition of salvation. The question is about ultimate meaning, ultimate satisfaction. I can get to a place because the Lord is my shepherd that I shall not want. Listen, when we get that narrative of heaven and hell and purpose and meaning and made in the image of God, all of it starts to fuse life with a kind of meaning we never would have had before. Here's the thing. Everything we do in life is about this. It's about the wanting, right? I want to meet that person. I want that house. I want that feeling. I want to accomplish that. I want. It is literally the reason you make every decision that you make in life. To want this, to get that. And then what begins to happen is we don't feel a contentment, so we're driven to unhealthy forms of want. Underline this word, I shall not want. What could get me in a situation where I don't want anymore? Think about that. This is Paul in Philippians 4. Go read it. Philippians 4. Unpack it in community groups this week. Community groups are rocking. We have 100, 200 people since we started going online sign up, new people for community groups all across Canada. Doesn't matter what city you're in. And one of the questions we're going to be talking about in community group this week is going through Philippians 4 and talking about contentment, because Paul says, look, I've been rich. I've had tons of dough, like MTV hip hop video dough, all right? I've had that kind of dough. And for those of you who are super young, you don't know what MTV is, all right? And then I've had no dough, all right? I've been nothing like survivor out in the middle of an island with a little bit of rice. I've had both those scenarios, trying to use TV illustrations here for the kids. I've had both of them, and he goes, I've been content in both because I have Jesus Christ, because I have an identity that transcends my circumstances. So picture you right now, some of you right there, you're like, my marriage is killing it. I got so much dough in the bank. I'm set. I'm good. My health is good. The grandkids, everything's good right now. I've got contentment in that. Some of you are there. Others of you, marriage is rocky, no money, family's a mess, all of this. But there's a contentment that comes. Why does Paul say I can have contentment in both? Because my identity and satisfaction is actually not in those things. It's in the person and the work of Jesus. That's where I get the kind of contentment. That's why he has no want. Because it's like going, okay, it's like saying, I have let's say someone sent me a check for $1 million, all right? Ding! All right. So that's 779. Right? So $1 million, let's say someone gave me it. So I have $1 million, great. And I'm like set. I'm like done. This is great. My family's going to be taken care of, blah, blah. But my golf game's off. And for some reason, this is frustrating me. Why would that be the case? This ultimate thing is taken care of. This peripheral thing that doesn't matter, doesn't matter. And he's saying once the ultimate thing is taken care of, your soul, then the peripheral stuff that happens in life that comes and goes and flows and you lose it and you got it and you're in the zone, you're not in the zone, it doesn't affect your ultimate, not happiness, but your contentment. Your kind of joy that transcends. That's what he's saying. I shall not want. Think about it. Why do you sin? You know what sin is? Why do you sin? Because God doesn't satisfy you enough. That's why. Why you live a life that says the Lord is my shepherd, I shall want. I shall want this. Why are you materialistic? Why are you greedy? Why do you order 8 things on Amazon every day and then wonder how Jeff Bezos is worth $9 trillion or whatever? I don't know, but why do you do that? Because you want, man. You keep wanting. Why do you lust? Because God isn't satisfying enough for you. Why do you gossip? Because God isn't also satisfying to you that you don't care about downing other people and feeling good about yourself. Ultimately, you don't feel that he's not pleasing enough. So C.S. Lewis wrote this: when we want to be something other than the thing God wants us to be, we must be wanting what in fact will not make us happy. That's the reality, because God knows what he wants us to be. God has said, I've set the universe up in this way for you to get the most out of it. And when you refuse to listen to the way that I've set it up, then you're going after your own way. And here in that moment, you know what that is? Here's what I love. It's a great image. When you go your own way, what's a sheep? What's a sheep? Right? When you go your own way, it's not that it's sin, right? You've heard me say that 1 trillion times. You're bored by that. You're on your couch right now going, it's sin. Yawn, check. No, it's dumb. It's not just sin, bro. You're dumb. When you go after stuff the way God didn't design it, you're an idiot. Because he's over here going, no, guys, I'm over here. I got it right here. You're going, rah, I know better than you. That's just dumb, like a sheep. This is the perfect psalm for you. When you sin, look in the mirror and go, I'm not just sinful, I'm dumb. This is the point. Because over and over and over, listen, to think that we know better about how to, when Jesus' voice speaks to us, says you don't need a new car. Take that money and give it to these missionaries overseas that actually need it. Take that money, give it to ministry. Take that money and help somebody out. No, but it's so shiny. I have the 2019 version. All right, when we do that, we're dumb. And God goes, why do you think you know better than me? On my worst day, I'm smarter than you. Listen, I went in a couple of years ago. My parents-in-law, Aaron's parents, were visiting. I was going to call them my grandparents, but that would not be, I would not be in my best interest. They were visiting, all right? And they went out to a movie, and I realized I needed to get in my house later, and they had taken my keys to the movie theater. And so I'm like, oh no. So I went to the movie theater. I'm like, I just need to get in there. I need to get in there. And the movie was like half an hour into it. And the guy's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I just need to get in. So I finally creep in there. And I'm like, hey, where are you? Where are you? And everyone's like, shut up. I'm like, you shut up. Right? And it was like, get in the movie. And I'm like, I need my keys. I need my keys. They hand me my keys. I run out. Listen, wouldn't it be weird if when I ran out of that movie theater, I looked at the screen for 5 seconds. Wouldn't it be weird if you said, how was that movie? And I said, the movie's terrible. Yeah, that's stupid. God knows the whole story. He knows how to get things done. We come for a snippet. We are literally here for 80 years, 86 years, 77 years, whatever it is. We are here for an instant, and we think we know better than him. This is what Lewis is trying to get at. When we go after the things in our way, we haven't heard the voice of the shepherd. We're not doing it his way, and we're going to mess it up. That's not only sinful, it's stupid. So let's repent of stupidity. Not just sin, let's repent of being dumb sheep, following the world over the cliff to our death. Versus the shepherd who's calling us. And sometimes his voice is harder to hear because it's on audio and the world's on HD video with all of its temptations. And God's going, I got it over here. I got you over here. I got you over here. Because he's a good shepherd. And the reason we sin is because that second half of verse 1 isn't true about us. Yes, he's our shepherd, but we are wanting. But when we really get him as shepherd, the Psalm, David says, I shall not want. And then the last of it, he says this, he makes me, and I love landing with this for us, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He makes me lie down in green pastures. In this chaotic moment of our lives right now, where there is a lot of chaos, this is beautiful because it says, in the noise, in the stress, in the anxiety, in the newness, here's what you need. He's gonna make you lie down in green pastures, man. Picture like the green grass, those moments where the sun is hitting you. All you hear is birds chirping, and he lays you down and gives you rest. In this moment, he gives you peace. He takes all the buzz away. You know what the thing, we talked about this a few months ago, the thing that Satan is going to do in your life, you know how he's gonna get you? Because he's smart. Listen, some of us look for like satanic attacks in our life as if they're like, you know, the exorcism of Emily Rose or something. It's like, you know, I'm gonna get you, and you're looking for claws and talking to you in the mirror, in the shower, steam, and you know, what's Satan gonna do? And it's like you're walking out to the barn with like a candle and midnight and there's evil things. Listen, man, that's how Satan, it's too obvious. You know, he's gonna get you midday, bright, focused, shiny, beautiful, one word, distraction. He's gonna kill your soul with your telephone. I love reading. Over the last 10 years of my life, I have found it harder to focus on reading a book because my brain waves have literally, the pathways in my brain have been carved differently because of distraction. I feel it in myself. The biggest fear I have for you and me is distraction will kill our soul life with God. And he's going, you know what I'm gonna do with you? Notice what he says. I'm gonna lay you down in green pastures. That's my plan. Not I'm gonna make you effective. I'm gonna get you to produce. I'm gonna get you to impact the world and kill it. First, he starts, I'm gonna give you rest. So, Philip Keller says this, I came to realize that nothing so quieted and reassured the sheep as to see me in the field. The presence of their master and owner and protector put them at ease as nothing else could do. And this applied day and night. The budding order, often an arrogant, cunning, and domineering old sheep will boss any bunch of sheep. Because of this rivalry, tension, and competition for status and self-assertion, there is friction in the flock. The sheep become edgy, tense, disconnected, and restless. You think that's your own soul? They lose weight and become irritable. Whenever I came into view, though, and my presence was there, it attracted their attention. The sheep quickly forgot their foolish rivalries and stopped fighting. The shepherd's presence made all the difference in their behavior. Listen, I need this text right now. He's gonna lie me down in green pastures. This is poet Wendell Berry. Years ago, he wrote this great poem. I love it. Listen to it. I mean, close your eyes if you want, but if it's gonna get weird, you can keep them open. When despair for the world grows in me and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests and the beauty on the water and the great heron feeds. I come in to the peace of wild things, who who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars, waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. That's what he's talking. He's going to lay. Now listen, we're chaotic. We're stressed. What's the solution? He's going to lay you down. He's going to say, I'm going to give you. Listen, there's two parts of the Christian life. There's contemplative and active. Those are the two spheres of the Christian life. And he's going, I'm going to give you contemplative first, which is beautiful because in this anxiety-ridden, stressful moment, we need to rest in green pastures. And you realize he's the one doing it. That's how salvation works. He's the one hunting down the 99. He's the one putting you to rest in the pastures. Listen, I've had a stressful week. You guys are emailing me, and I love you, and it's great. But you're emailing me all kinds of stuff. And it's stressing me out. I'm getting emails on the one hand telling me that I need to make sure that we are making sure there's none of this chaos about conspiracies and COVIDs and blah, blah, blah. And I need to make a stance as a pastor and use my platform to speak against it. And then others are coming in and say, we need to be set free from the governmental chains and use your platform to tell the church that we need to be out doing things. I got both sides coming at me right now. I feel like a pinata. My calling is not to be your pinata. It's to be your pastor. And it's to understand the call of God in our life and to say, of all the stress and all the strain and all the things I want to be for you. And I know we start to project on other people, our stresses, our anxieties. My desire is not that you're stressed, not that you're trying to take on the pressures and pain of the entire world and the plans of all of us and everybody else, but to rest. That he would put you down in green pastures, that you would understand the contemplative life, that before just doing, you would actually hear from him and he would have an identity in you and he would lay you down and go, okay, let me give you rest now. Because some of you, your personalities are just to do, and you haven't rested yet. And it's funny that in the order, this comes first. The resting. God does this. You don't have to prove anything anymore. This is the beauty of the gospel. You don't have to prove anything anymore because the first thing he does is he says, it's finished. On the cross, it is finished. It's like when Seinfeld wrapped his show at the end of the 90s, he was speaking to another very successful comedian, and he says, I feel like I need to do something else. I feel like what am I going to do? And the comedian said, dude, you created the greatest sitcom in the history of television for 9 straight seasons. Your work is done. You have nothing left to prove. It's over. And in some weird way, I want to kind of say that to you. Because of what Jesus Christ has done, what is the ultimate hope? Not the active. We're going to get there. It pivots to being active, and we want to make impact. But first, it's you take the identity he's given you and rest. My burden is light. So you've been watching the MJ Last Dance, right? So we look at MJ and we're like, MJ, Michael Jordan, greatest, he's the GOAT, hashtag GOAT, all right? There's no debate about that. LeBron, who? All right, it's MJ, the GOAT. Now, here's the thing. Why do we celebrate MJ? Why do we love MJ? Why do we, he's worshiped all over the world. Why? Because his performance is so good. 54 points, 52 points, 40 points in 40 minutes. Over. Last shot. Get it to Michael. And he delivered every time. His performance is great. I was reading this article this week, Do You Still Want to Be Like Mike? And it said this, in the world, status is tethered to performance. It's the same in the gospel. The difference, however, is that our status as believers is not tethered to our performance, but Christ's performance for us. That's why we rest. That's why he can lay us down in green pastures. That's why we don't need to be tired. You know why we can get to a place in our life where We don't have to run on the hamster wheel anymore and feel tired and anxious and stressed, because he was tired and anxious and stressed for us. That's what the Gethsemane is. Remember when Jesus comes back and he tells the disciples to keep watch at the end of Matthew, and he comes back and they're all sleeping, and he's got this great line where he's like, you couldn't watch for an hour? That's actually what he says. These guys are so tired. Jesus asked them to do something. Well, he went and prayed for an hour. These guys were supposed to keep watch, and they all fall asleep. You know how tired they were? You know how tired Jesus is? Then he goes to the trial. He's so tired by the time he's got to carry his cross that he can't even carry it. Remember that? And another guy has to carry it for him. Do you know why you don't need to be tired? Because he was tired for you. He took the tiredness so you can rest in the pastures. But that only happens when we trust him, when we give our life to him. And some of you haven't done that. Some of you have, but you need to. The gospel isn't something you believe once. It's the thing that gets you to the pastures over and over and over. And every day you're waking up and going, because of the work and performance of Jesus on my behalf, now he wants to make me rest in the most stressful, anxious moment of my life. And let's not pretend these aren't stressful, interesting. This is such a unique moment in our history. And what are you going to show the world? What do these sheep? So we want to show the world a rested, content, satisfied people. So they look in over the fence and say, I want that. I want what they have. Is that your life? Is that how you use your social media? Is that how you use your marriage? Is that how you use your time? Father, I pray that we are people of witness that have a shepherd, the good shepherd, and we can show the world by word and deed that we are satisfied in you so much that we can say with David, I don't want. But it's not because of the stuff I have. It's because of the one I have. It's because of the shepherd I have. I don't want. Let us be those contemplative people who know that before we act and prove ourselves and be people of action and change the world and take the world for Christ first, we lay in rest in the green pastures that you put us in, and we enjoy you. We actually take pleasure in you. We actually know you and can hear your voice, and it changes us and the direction of everything we do. Give every person watching this, listening to this right now, that gift of yourself. And those who've never trusted you, that today they would say, I need a leader. I need a good shepherd. And be that for them as they trust you. In Jesus' great name we pray. Amen.